So one of the first things, actually, can I get someone to come up? Can I get Des? You around? Is he here? No? Someone? You want? Oh, you want to come? Okay. What was that laugh? Okay. So the first thing that I feel when there's the idea of Sing is freedom of movement. Freedom of movement in the body. So not freedom of movement in the muscles, and a feeling of decompression and looseness, like all the joints are oiled up. So exactly what you were saying, not going something like this. Everything feels free to move, but especially in this area at the back. So the back muscle, because it's easy to feel freedom of movement in the arms, right? It's easy to get looseness here. It's easy even to get looseness in the knees. But it's not very easy to get freedom of movement in the scapula, in the rib cage, in the spine. Freedom of movement in that area is what I'm talking about. And you see Sigel, what he would do is, he go to people's spine and press on the spine, and I'll show you something that should be felt by people, right? So, and again, I really, I'm not just trying to sound humble, I can't do it properly myself. And with the feeling that Sigel used to give me, I don't think I'm even a tenth of the way there, because I remember what the feeling was. But I'm starting to feel little hints of what was going on. So if for example, Des is feeling my spine like this, if you, let's say, hold like that, and you sort of try to see if there's any movement in this area, right? So Sigel used to say, sometimes when people couldn't rise up, you'll do it to me in a sec, when people couldn't rise up, he said there's either muscular tension or skeletal tension. So some people, their muscles, their external muscles were okay, but the skeleton, so the ligaments and all the connective tissues, they were the ones that were locked up. And some people, poor people, they had both. So they were muscularly tense and their skeleton was quite tense, right? So that's why you need to have movement and freedom of movement in the muscles, but also the decompression in the spine, all at the same time, right? So if I, for example, and there's, you give feedback, if you do what you say, if I sort of stand like this, and then you try to rise up, if I stand, try to see if you can, what you can feel. So a lot of people, and when I'm trying to, feel my students back, they're like that. So that even if they try to rise up, either if within that you go, no, rise up, then they start moving it themselves. They're going like that. Which, yes, there was some movement, but it's a tense, it's an addition in terms of muscularly, right? It's not a release. And so now if you do that again, yeah. So what do you feel? Do you feel anything? Is there any difference? Opening. Yeah, so what I feel is the spine moving, and I'll show you guys, see if you guys can feel anything later. What I feel is the spine, simultaneously, as the muscles get freedom of movement, at the same time that the muscles release, the spine gets freedom of movement as well. Now, I remember there was a period about a year or something where, for me, my case, he would say, Nima, you can see from back, you can see Nima, he rises up, he'll help me rise up, and he'll say, okay, up here, hip, and then relax, and I'll go, like that. He can't keep the two together. When you can rise up, but as soon as you relax, it goes like that. So there couldn't be an upwards and downwards flow at the same time. And that's what's required. So one thing is freedom of movement. And if you think about it, freedom of movement, if you're free to move, and of course there needs to be directed later, but if the joints are free to move, on impact or on when someone's trying to restrain you and you can still you're still free to move, that's equals to power. And that's why with Sigel you don't feel, or what Gary was saying with Tony, you can't feel where it's coming from, because there's the force is shed by hundreds of joints, and there's too many things going on rather than just one main joint that's rotating from here. So if you can freely move, for example, if you stop me from, Mr. Miyagi taught me this one, so I'm going to do the wax on, wax off. If you hold as hard as you can, don't let me move, right? So if I'm, for example, going, okay, align my structure with the stance, pushing to align the structure, and from here feed into here and try to move, this sets a perfect platform for Des to be able to feel it, right? And then he can push into that. Whereas if we're thinking, okay, instead of thinking about what's happening here, basically go into that nothingness state where you start thinking, where is my body first? So Taigong, the pelvis relaxing, start feeling the spine relaxing, the back relaxing. Make sure before I move, I'm supporting everything myself, and he can't feel where I'm about to move from. So if you hold as high as you can. So from there, if I try to maintain that and just basically move my arm wherever I want using that state, yeah, so try to hold high. Yeah. So that is using, I could do it, and I was using muscles, as you could see, there is use of muscles, but it was enough relaxation in there, or that state in there, to be able to still do it. Now that is, if you can do that, is okay, how do I do less effort, less effort, less effort? So then, another 4 years, maybe I can do it a little bit better. But then if there is freedom of movement, means that is one of the attributes of being able to sing. The second thing, when Sigun was talking about shoulder manipulation, he talked a lot about elbow force. He wrote an article on elbow force, right? So what's elbow force? Does anyone know what's elbow force? Anyone? Pardon? Mass from your body. Exactly right. Mass. So being able to transfer. So this is connected to here. What Tony was saying. Actually everything is connected to. Everything is connected back to your center. And that's why Sigun said you don't feel your arms. But first one is the elbow, and the knees, because they're the main connections to the torso. They're the main connections to the body. Once it's past here, it's a little bit easier to get it out there. The first part is here and here, right? So one of the attributes of being able to get a hint of sing is that elbow force and knee force, and it means the relaxation down to the knee, they happen automatically without having to, like you said, doing something like this, without having to actually physically move the shoulder down to the elbow. It's actually through the upwardness, it's actually through the decompression of the spine, of this area, that like a coat hanger, that they start to hang down. Right? So for example, if I'm saying Tansa, if I'm doing something like this, sinking into it and sinking into it. Perfect platform, and maybe if you push this in, if I was especially bigger, I can manipulate and do something like that. But it's a different thing to standing normally and then start thinking Taigong and start thinking rising up. So as there starts to pull up, I'll just keep thinking rising up. So elbow force becomes, it's just there if you pull it up. Yeah, so here, not using anything from the legs, elbow force is there. Now at that point, later on, we'll talk about how to start pointing that. Their knees will be the same. If someone's pulling up, later I can show you in the workshop. If you start pulling up on the knee to, go like that, it's the rising up and releasing that allows that, whatever that thing is, to come out to the tips of the elbows and the knees. Yeah? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that we get a whole, again, going on the back end of what the two Tony said, you get a holistic feel. You get a holistic feel of the whole body entire. You need to be able to feel the whole body holistically before you can even attempt to find where the center of it is, right? So you start to get a holistic feel rather than this shoulder needs to be here, this needs to be there, that needs to be here. For example, if you're doing something like that to me, say if I throw a punch, right? I'll throw a punch and the person, or my arm is fully extended, that if you start to give pulling force, so my body's like this. If you start pulling slowly, so get me out of balance here, so my body's like this. So at that point, rather than thinking, okay, at that point, either I want to do this, which other people will do, or for us, that in this image, we think, okay, shoulder's not in the right spot. I want to pull my shoulder back, so more knees. Or instead of doing that, if you can start, at that point, start to think Taigong and rising up, so at that point, you get a holistic feel. Then from here, even moving if you hold again, yeah, at that point, even softening the knees, not moving the arms, or if you hold again, if you start to move your center, because the body feels like it's one unit, then all you got to do is just think from that state, I want to do this, or I want to move that, or whatever, right? So we get a freedom of movement, elbow force, knee force, and holisticness in the feeling of the whole body. Yeah, make sense so far? Yeah. Okay, cool. Then, so then after that, then once you start to get that feeling, it's time to go to work. It's time to test that, right? So it's time to maintain it. Like I said with that Jenks, you could do it very well this way, but then once you start moving, things start to get jumbled up in the mind and you couldn't produce that. So start to be able to move, or someone's applying force onto you, or when you're holding the pole, how should you hold a pole or a weapon that Wang Sisu was demonstrating? Even holding it, how do you hold it in a way that it's such a soft way that the way you're holding your arm out or you're holding the weapon doesn't claim your awareness away from this. Because it does, it will. Even if you don't want it to, it will claim your awareness. Because muscle memory or muscle activation will override intention any day of the week. That's the problem, because we can't relax. That's why relaxation is the number one thing. Like, simple, if you stand like this, there are people that are standing, just for a second, if you think about, okay, my pelvis spine, you can maybe think about it a little bit. Then try to pull your arms out here and think pelvis spine. It should feel different, because there's already the activation of the muscles here. It claims your intention. When the muscles are on, it claims your intention. So by even doing a fuxia, if we're not doing it using that mind, if we're not shaping the entire, just by doing the movement muscularly, it's going to claim out, it comes off, right? So this is another thing that he was talking about, the straight on, how to be able to direct the straight on. And it was touched on pretty much by Tony Seiler in his talk, is that, so the easiest way to start to shape and test Sing and Ning Tao is in Si Lung Tao. That's why Si Lung Tao is everything. It's the foundation of everything. Why? Because it's how to maintain that as we are moving the arm. So to move the arm, previously for a few years, I was, as I said, working on moving it from here. So even controlling from here, where is it going to? You know, if I'm just going like this, even if it's very relaxed and just going like that, very relaxed, where is that going to? Is the line this big? Was the straight line that big? Or can you do the same thing, but the direction of the wrist is every millimeter? Yeah, there's precision, every millimeter. So basically, it's the same thing as doing that, but you're focusing like a bullet, focusing everything into that precision to a point where if you do that, someone pushes down, you don't have to use the bluntness of your structure to go like that. You use the piercing quality of your structure to pierce straight through. So that's focusing all of that Nim Tao into a line. That's a very, very, very important thing.